Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Joe. As you can see today, we're not in the shop, but instead we're in this very, very pink room, and we're going to be building this tiny bed for a tiny person going by nothing but a photo from Pinterest. And I'm going to show you how surprisingly easy it is to build something like this for your kids. All right, let's get started. All right, to get started on my daughter's bed, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab one of the Toddler mattresses we have. We're going to take a couple of measurements. Now that we got the measurements all taken care of, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our 1x6 stock and we're going to cut it down to the lengths that we need. So the length of the bed is going to be roughly 52.5 inches and the width of the bed is going to be 28 3/4. So as you can tell by the picture, basically the bed frame is just a rectangle box with an A-frame that's going to crisscross and then a brace going across it. The one thing you can't see is that underneath the mattress itself, there's going to be some lateral supports just to keep the frame from racking. But because the mattress itself is going to obscure your ability to see any of the inside of the rectangular box being made, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use pocket screws to build out the frame. Okay, so the pocket holes are drilled. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use some of these right angle clamps to help me get everything lined up and then drive the screws in. The one thing I will say is when you're drilling the pocket holes, just make absolute certain that you're drilling the pocket holes on the proper boards before you go ahead and assemble everything. So remember, the inside of the box ultimately has to match the dimensions of the mattress that you measured, because you need the mattress to slide into the box. So I probably should have checked this first before I went to go ahead and screw and glue everything together. Thank God I didn't put the glue on yet. But I assumed the boards coming from the big box store were going to be 5.5 inches width. And they're actually slightly off. So you could see right here, the bottom board is wider than the top board, and it's perfectly in line over there. So to fix that, I'm just going to run all the boards through my table saw real quick, just to make sure that I have a uniform width, so when I do screw everything up, everything ends up perfectly level on the top and perfectly level on the bottom as well. So I added this clamp here just because the when you're putting in the pocket screws tend to push the board or pull the board to the outside. So if you don't have one of those fancy Craig clamps that goes into the pocket screw hole and holds it tight there, it is a little bit more difficult to do with your hand. I did it with my hand on the other three corners and it ended up fine. Just had the right thought to grab the clamp after the fact when I was on the last corner, of course. This makes it a lot easier. Okay, so our box is built. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the mattress and test fit it in here. You never know. Could have made a mistake measuring. Better to catch it now than when everything's all done and painted and can't really correct it at all. Perfect fit. So now I'm just taking some measurements to find the center of the frame. And these measurements are going to be used to add a cross brace that's going to keep the frame from racking. Originally, I thought I was going to need 3 braces, but after getting the first brace in, I realized that 3 was going to be complete overkill. So I just ended up with the 1 brace going right down the center. Okay, now that the frame's all taken care of, I'm going to go ahead and use a 1/4-inch round over bit to round over all the edges. Again, this is for a toddler, so we want to make it as safe as possible. I'm doing this now because once I put the A-frame on, it's going to make it really hard to get both sides of this frame. The outer side of the frame won't matter so much because the A-frame itself will be attached to the outside, but the inner side would still pose a sharp edge that a kid could bump themselves off. Now, unlike the picture, I'm gonna paint this entire bed. I think my wife said she wanted the bottom to be a pinkish color, similar to what the room is, and then the A-frame structure and the cross brace would be white. That's why I'm building the whole thing out of poplar. I'm gonna go ahead though and pre-sand the frame here before I put the A-frame on, down to 180. Just because I think it's going to be a little bit easier than trying to sand around the A-frame. I'm not going to go crazy here. I'm not going to try to make it perfect again because we're going to be painting it and the paint will cover up most of the blemishes if there are any blemishes. All right, so the the frame of the bed is completely done now, sanded, ready to be painted. The next thing I have to do is work on the A-frames for either end of the bed and then the cross bracing. Unfortunately, I don't have any dimensions for any of this. I'm just going off of a picture from Pinterest. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a piece of 1x3 poplar that I have, 8 foot long, cut it in half to 2 4-foot pieces, and then just clamp it up on one side until I get to a proportion with the frame that looks good. Once I have that, then I'll cut it down to the final dimension, and we'll go from there. This is what I'm gonna go with. I am gonna have to stop right now, run to the store and grab one more 1x3 so I can finish this. So I'm gonna go do that now, and then we'll pick right back up where we are. Okay, I'm back from the big box store with another 1x3. I already cut it down so that I now have 4 pieces that are 47.5 inches to go ahead and make the A-frames. Before I go ahead and mock that up again though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to round over all of the edges on these A-frame pieces now because I know they're the dimension I want them. I'm just going to go ahead and use my trim router since I already have that set up from doing the frame of that. So the best way to make sure that the intersection here is centered over the bottom would be to take a level and just make sure that the level is plumb. And then if both points are meeting up on the level and the level's plumb, everything's going to be in line. Unfortunately, both my longer levels are out in my shed, and I'm too lazy to run out in there and get them. But I did have this plumb bob that's been lying around that I bought for whatever reason and never used it. So I'm going to go ahead and tie a string on this, and we're going to use this to get everything lined up. Okay, so this is a little bit of an awkward procedure by yourself. So I just went ahead and clamped on some supports to help me hold the cross brace in line. And now I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to continue to pre-drill the holes all the way into the cross brace itself, just to prevent any splitting, and then I'll drive some screws through. All right, so if you wanted to, you could stop right here. The bed frame is all done, as you can see. The one last thing I am going to do, though, is I'm going to make some plugs for these screw holes. So there's 3 screw holes on each side. I'm going to go ahead and just drill 6 plugs really quick on the drill press. Fill those in, and then this way, when everything's all nice and finished, there'll be no exposed fasteners at all. Now you could, if you wanted to, you could have just used dowels or dominoes or some other type of joinery to connect that cross brace. Screws are really the fastest, and even having to take the time to cut the plugs to cover them up still ends up being very, very fast. Just always cut a few more plugs than you need, because inevitably if you cut the exact amount, you can break one and you can need some more. With the exception of paint, the bed is now all done. All the exterior holes are plugged, so we're gonna have a nice smooth finish. The only thing I'm gonna do just to make my life a little bit easier here is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna detach the A-frame from the actual frame itself in order to finish it. Also, it's just gonna make it a lot easier to get this thing upstairs into my daughter's room, going through the doorways. I think it's gonna be a little bit struggle navigating up the stairwell as is. So I'll take it apart, I'll finish it, and then I'll meet you upstairs. This is a very simple project that beginners could definitely jump right into. You don't need any fancy tools to do this. You could do this entire project with a circular saw, a drill, and a piece of sandpaper. Things like cutting the plugs and rounding the corners are all little extras to make it a little safer, a little nicer, but they're not necessary. So if you don't have the tools, don't be discouraged. Just go ahead and jump right in with what you have. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked the video, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and check out some other videos on the channel.